Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough, and this is episode 864. Now, in today's episode, we're talking about the power of I am. The power of I am. Now, the reason why this is going to be important for us, because what we identify with is usually going to be the driving force to either having health, wealth, friendships, relationships, career, business, success. All of those things will usually be dependent on your identity, because that's what an I am is, right? Like I am, we identify as ourselves. Excuse me. So with the I am statement, it's also important to recognize, here's what I was going to say. Get back on track. The next episode you don't want to miss, because it's going to be the hypnosis session around this theme. So we get the conscious level of perspective in this episode, and then the unconscious on the hypnosis session. And if you're super awesome by being a subscriber to the app at freehypnosis.app, you will get the sleep version of this episode, which just makes it so much easier. You listen to it as you go to sleep and wake up transformed. So go to freehypnosis.app if you haven't become, or you haven't downloaded it and you haven't subscribed to it. It supports the app growth, it supports you, it supports others, and it just means we get to rise together and shine together. So getting back to this topic though, knowing that you'll have those in the hypnosis in the day and the night coming up, know that we also have the identity in many different subjects. Okay, identity in different subjects is really like, well, I can identify as, for me personally, as being a brother. I can identify as being a son. I can identify in the past as being a partner. I can identify myself as a hypnotherapist. I can identify myself as being a pet-rant or a pet parent. I can identify lots of different roles that I take, and you can too, right? Like if you just think about it, you may have many roles which you identify with. So know that that also means we can change our role depending on that situation. Sometimes you have to be the mother or the father. Sometimes you may be the son or the daughter, or like I said, a sibling. Sometimes you be the identified as the client, and sometimes you'll be identified as the colleague or the business owner who's serving a client. So we have all these different levels of identity depending on the context. And more than that, the thing that we're talking about today is like, how do you identify with yourself? Like on a personal level, beyond the roles that we have, how do you identify? Like, do we identify as being worthy of that relationship or that money? Do we identify as being deserving of happiness and for having love, to have experience? Do we feel that we identify as being capable? Like, I am capable, I am worthy, I am deserving, I am enough? Or do we tend to identify at times, and it can be in a specific area of life, which we'll get into as a part of a solution, but sometimes what we do in one thing, we tend to generalize into the everything. So for example, maybe we had a bad relationship growing up, whether it be with our parents, and when we assume the belief of not being ever enough in their eyes, and therefore we never believe enough in other people's eyes when it comes to promotions or when it comes to relationships on an intimate level. So we can assume someone's perception of us as our own, which causes us to then repeat that identity in other areas. And we can know why that happens as well, because it's just life. It's the experiences that we go through. If you go through significant emotional events, it's easy to come to the conclusion about your identity in this world, how you see yourself in this world, how you experience yourself in this world in the context of those different areas of life. And we go through a series of events, and let's just say you don't believe that you're worthy or enough. And you can change it for whatever it is to you. Even if you don't quite know, there's going to be this, I just feel like I am not, and then fill in the blank. We go through all these significant emotional events which then repeat themselves. So let's just say you had either you or someone else, just so you can understand it, you grew up with a lot of high expectations placed upon you by a guardian type of figure. It could have been a teacher, it could have been a parent, could anyone who you just identify with as someone who knows more than you or expects more than you, or they're the more predominant figure. So therefore, unconsciously, we're looking up and going, well, that must mean it is true. Because if there's this guardian style figure, mother, father, and so on, we presume know more than us. And also because we may like or love them, we want to impress them, try to live up to their standards. But let's just say they were never met. You never felt like you were loved or understood or accepted or of value. Then you'll go ahead, if let's just say that one event happened to be a number of events, but then even after that person who said those things, maybe you'll then seek out other people unconsciously to live up to that expectation of never being ever enough. So then you start to attract the type of people who will reinforce that identity. And I'm not saying you consciously go, well, I'm going to find a narcissistic person, or I'm going to find someone who is going to take advantage of me, who's going to either hurt me, abuse me, take my money, or put me down, all of those things. We're not consciously doing so, but it becomes the unconscious narrative that is all we're worth, to be treated a certain way. And that's when it starts to bleed over into different areas of our life. As I said, what we tend to do in one thing, especially on an identity level, we tend to see that in the everything. So one question I'd like to think about is that that's not, and it's easy for me to say, by the way, because it is unconscious, but it's not who you are. And we've said this recently as a theme, it's just something that you're presently perceiving as who you are. Because you weren't born that way. I don't think we, you can go back in your mind, like how long have I felt, for example, not worthy? Okay, I had it when I was 21, or I had it when I was 15, or I had it when I was 14, I had it when I was 10, I had it when I was 3 years old. Somewhere along the line, there's going to be a time where you were enough, and even if you didn't understand what that meant, you still felt that you were, because you had no concept of what enough is and what not enough is, or what worthiness is and what not being worthy is. But there's going to be a time when you didn't have it, which then presupposes it cannot be fixed in our identity. It's like we assumed it to be true by maybe what someone said, did to us over one event or a long period of time. We assumed it to be truth, but there was a time when we didn't have it. I mean, just to be silly with it, do you think the beginning cells of you believe that they weren't worthy, or you weren't worthy? The beginning cells of you, biological, felt, oh, we're not good enough for this. We're not capable. There was no consciousness thought about it. You just were. You just were. It was not even a part of your reality. So if we understand that there were times in our life, even if we cannot remember them, where we felt either I am enough, or I am worthy, I am deserving, I am capable, or you just had no evidence to prove one way or the other, you just were, it still means you were not enough, or not worthy. You just were. There was no concept of it. So we now know that that is not who you are, right? You cannot be that as a sole person, as someone. Absolutely, you may believe it to be true, But the belief is the enemy of knowing, right? The belief is the enemy of knowing. You may believe in many things, but beliefs come and go. You may have believed things growing up as a child to be true and real. For example, when I was a kid, it was like wrestling, right? Like the WWF or whatever it was. And when someone said it wasn't real, I was like, what? I was lied to all this time. I wasn't like a crazy, maybe I was a crazy big fan back then. I can't quite remember. But I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I had this belief, which I thought was true, but it was all real. And then figuring it out that it wasn't. And we've had many of these. I'm not going to say any more than that, because maybe it is real, by the way. If you believe wrestling is real, that is fine as well. That can be the knowingness. But there's many examples growing up which we thought were true. Some people may believe in the Tooth Fairy or Father Christmas, Santa Claus, and that's all good as well. You may not believe in those things, but there are times when you did, and then it suddenly rocked your world maybe, and go, oh my goodness. But that is just a belief. It's not the reality. We just become conditioned to look for evidence to prove our own narrative to be true. Whether it be good or bad or indifferent, it seeks out more of the same. And that is why we go from one relationship to another, or from one level of poverty to the other, or one career to another career. We look for the same types of evidence because that's all we know about, even to the point where I might even say, look, you are so worthy, you are so deserving, and I might say it with 1,000,000% congruency. There's going to be a part of you which is going to delete it and look for the evidence to counter that. You're going to try to hold on to that belief because we believe that is who we are, and some people can't even imagine what it would be like to be worthy. They can't even imagine what it would be like to be loved or to know that they're of value. So if that's something that they've forgotten, right, because we've had all this data since, and all this data to prove that we're not enough or worthy because this person did that, or that job did that, or our finances represent this, and that must mean I am not enough. We're generalizing creatures, so we look for these things. We always say, well, this means that. Does it really mean that? Does that person saying that mean I'm not worthy? Does that person doing that really mean as a reality I am not good enough? We're assuming it to be true, and we hold on to it because that's our narrative. But like I said, that belief is the enemy of knowing. Knowingness is a place where we really want to get to. So a shift in our perception could be, okay, number one, we weren't always like this. Therefore, it's not a fixed state of identity. It means it has not been here and now it presently is, but it also means the counter could happen as well. We can also go, well, how long does it take to decide a belief of I am not good enough or worthy? It can just take a moment. So surely it can take another moment to be able to flip the switch. Because some people go, well, because I've had this for so long, it means it takes the equal amount of time, or at least a lot of time, to undo it. No, you had lots of maybe evidence, but the time of the decision to believe that will be a moment. A decision. Decisions don't take time. They take a moment of time, not a prolonged amount of time anyway. So that may shift our perception about this topic, that I have not always been this way, and therefore it cannot always be the truth if I do something about it, or if I start to seek more out different evidence. And that could be the next place that we go right now. Because let's just say, whether you're a mother or father or you're neither, you might believe you're not good enough. But if I said to you, for some people, they might still agree, but I might go, you're not good enough to be a parent. You're not worthy to be a parent. Now, for some of you, you might go, I am a good parent. I am worthy to be a parent. So then it shifts your perception. I said this right in the beginning, we have different roles. And sometimes the lens of that role will change the identity of our worth. So you can go ahead and maybe look through these different lenses where you are enough or where you are worthy. Like, are you good enough to get dressed in the morning? I hope so. Are you good enough and worthy to eat? I hope so. Because if you were really, really believing you weren't worthy as a whole place, then the chances are you probably wouldn't eat. You're not worthy of the food. So there are lots of different kind of layers we can look through. And what this does, it reframes the situation. Not now am I I'm not enough or worthy for the everything. We're narrowing it down into certain context, different lenses, different roles, because it cannot always be true. Like, some people go, well, I am always depressed. I am a depressed person. Well, if I can make that person laugh, even just for a moment, they weren't depressed in that moment. When they watch a funny movie or they play a meaningful song, they're not depressed in that moment, but they identify as being depressed. And that's one of the things I have an issue with labels, by the way. I understand why we have labels, because it makes sense. Like, oh, I have ADHD, or oh, I have dyslexia, or I have depression. I understand because it makes sense to us. But I would hate for us to go, well, that's all I am, or that's all I will ever be. Because there can be a limitation in the label, right? There can be a limitation in the label, because that type of identity statement then deletes all possibility of something else. So if I were you, I'd be looking for counter examples which disprove this whole statement of this is who I am. I am not fill in the blank. You can also begin to think about, well, when does it occur? Does it happen in certain situations, and isolate it down that way? Because I just think it's just what we presently believe that we are. Like, if there was no experience, and this is a weird one, okay? If there was no experience, you just were. Like, you didn't have any identification between what is and what is not. What is, like, nothing exists in your reality for a moment. Like, there was no cups, no phones, no people, no environment. If everything just wasn't there but you couldn't feel what is not you. So bear with me. You wouldn't be able to make a judgment. What is pain and what is not pain? What is love and what is not love? What you are, what you are not. You would just be, right? Like, that's all that there is. So it's a bit of a mind spiral thinking here. But if nothing else exists, in other words, you had no data of the past experience, no thought of the future because you just were, what would that identity be? Well, to me, it'd be just, I am. Even if you get to that place, like, you might not even go, I am, because you just are. And I want us to think about our life being more like that. Like, yes, I want you to go, I am worthy. I am good enough. Even though this happened to me, it doesn't mean that's what I am, because I am also fill in the blank. So we can come up with all these statements that even though that person said that, it doesn't have to mean this, because although I went through that, it also means something else in a positive. So even though I went through trauma and abuse growing up, doesn't mean that's all I am, because I am also X, Y, Z. I'm a good enough parent, I'm a loving brother, or I'm fill in the blank in those different roles. But so those statements are really good, and I believe you should decide and declare those. Like, even though this happened, I decide and declare I am more than my past experience. I decide and declare, even though this is hard, I'm going to go all in on me for once. Even though everyone said this, but it'll never work, even though I'm going to do it anyway because it's on my heart. Like, a lot of people don't invest in themselves, and I don't mind saying, you should invest in yourself. Like, most of us were told to invest in ourselves because we went to school for like X amount of years in the beginning. Like, we were there to educate ourselves, whether it happened or whether it didn't. Maybe we didn't get the best teachers, maybe we weren't the best students, but that was a level of an investment. So I've never ever have hesitation as to saying you should invest yourself in yourself. You don't have to invest with me, right? You don't have to make a monetary transaction with me, but I want you to still invest in yourself in money and time. That's what I want for you. So decide and declare you're ready to go all in on yourself, even though this stuff happened. I am worthy of that, even if I don't believe it. There's a part in my heart which goes, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to choose over fear and choose what is right. I'm going to be the person that my young me wanted to be. I'm going to be and make my future self proud. So when I'm older and I look back and I go, that was the moment where that declaration, that decision changed the path of my history. Even if we go generations and generations, you have an opportunity in every moment to change your future. And as I said, I'd like us to get to the place of I am good enough, worthy, deserving. But even more than that, that I am. I just am. Those are experiences, those are labels, but I still am. And that might be a step too far, because that used to freak me out in a weird and wonderful way, just going, this just is. It just is. Like, it's an event, it's an experience, it is time, it shall pass, I shall pass, it just is. I am. So it gets a bit weird and wonderful out there, but it's something that I like to think about, because then it lets go of the self-judgment. Because if I am, then I don't have to judge myself. There's nothing to add to that statement other than I am. I just am. And that gets really interesting for me. But the other thing you can do is look through the eyes of, even if you don't believe it, look through the eyes of other people who love you. What do they see in you that you don't see in yourself? Because sometimes we can be people pleasers. We can seek external validation. Sometimes, no matter, like I said, I could say you're worthy, you're deserving, you're capable. You may not believe it, but maybe look through my eyes, or look through, like I said, other people who like and love you, and try to be as uncritical in their judgment. Because if they even believe it or know it to be true, we shouldn't just dismiss it, even if we don't believe it. But what it will do is it will change your frame of reference. Because if you go and look through the eyes of love, you have to go there for a moment and not be in the place of maybe I'm not worthy. Like, you have to go there, which makes a biological, neurological shift. Because you're entering a space that you've never really looked through. Even if you don't believe it, you can accept that it's their belief system or their truth. And then what you can do on the counter is maybe think of those who did judge you, those high expectations in that example which were never fulfilled, or maybe the person who did hurt us. Maybe, like for me, I've said this many a times, like the teacher who said some mean things about my future as I was growing up, which created a whole ton of self-identifying beliefs of what I could and couldn't do in life. Well, what if I look through their eyes? It doesn't mean that I forgive them. I mean, even though I have, right? Like, I don't have any essence or energy there. In fact, I could be quite thankful because it allowed me to do what I'm doing today. That resistance and that pain, which is a reframe, caused me to fall into this, which then has created 864 episodes over, like, must be like almost 400 hours of free content for people, 16 million views and downloads. Like, that resistance causes. So in a part, I can be very thankful for some of that resisting conflict, because it caused me to wake up to something which is even more. So we can utilize it sometimes, but that's not the intention as to why I said that. The intention is maybe we took something on personally as truth, but really it was they were going through stuff. And it's not to forgive them necessarily, as I said, we don't have to. But we can maybe get a level of understanding that it wasn't ours to take on. Because It wasn't. It wasn't nice, but it wasn't ours to take on as truth. Maybe we might go, well, they were going through a ton of stuff. Maybe they were told that stuff growing up. Maybe their parents in that example had a very high expectations for them and they're repeating the pattern. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean we have to forgive. There's all your personal choice here. But what it does mean is it doesn't mean that you have to carry it on. We don't have to personify. As humans, we personify everything. Because like you could be walking down the street and then you hear laughing. And you're like, oh my, was that about me? Did I do something? Did I walk funny? Did I do this? Like we assume it to be all about us because this world of yours right now is the center of your universe. Why? Because you're looking throughout your, or experiencing throughout your 5 senses. So you are the center of the universe in your world, right? So we do take everything personally, but maybe it's time to be able to look through the eyes of the loved ones or those who see those qualities, as I said. But on top of that, look through the eyes of the critic or the person who did those things or said those things and recognize what was their intention. We may come to realize it was never about us personally. They may have directed it at us, but it wasn't about us personally. It was just something that they're going through. Maybe that they're repeating, as I said. And what that can do is then once again, well, that is not who I am, even more so because it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me personally. It was just their stuff that I somehow unconsciously assumed to be true. Somehow it's kind of easy because maybe we're very young and that's what we didn't know. We didn't have enough life experience. Maybe we're going through emotions to deal with that. And we thought, oh, well, I'm just going to go into protective mode and go, that must mean I'm not enough, to try to play small in the future so I don't get hurt. So there's many different factors here. But I wanted this episode to be an understanding that it is not all who you are. There's so much more that you don't know that you could begin to know. And notice I said know and not believe, because we want to get to that place of knowingness, not from fakeness, not from overconfidence. I'm talking about competence. I'm talking about the authentic self, the authentic you that passes less judgment upon yourself in that negative way and gives you a foundation to grow into who you really want to become. As I said, be the person that you needed back then, which would be the counter opposite of I am not enough or I am worthy, and also be the person that will make your future self proud, which will change the timeline of that future self. So when you go off into the future and look back, you go, that was the moment where my young self, because you're in the future, decided to be different today. So decide to be different, decide to be more than you could ever imagine, because whatever you think you are, that you are always more in every single way. And decide and declare that even though I went through X, Y, Z, even though the people said this, even though I was hurt, it's not who I am as an identity. It's just what I have been through, what I'm presently going through, but it's not the identity of me. That past data doesn't have to be my identity. I can choose to get to a place where I just know I am. The power of I am. So with that, watch out for the next episode, because we will be doing a live hypnosis session. I say live for those who are on YouTube right now, because I do stream at youtube.com/JosephClough 3 times per week for free, 3 times for free, and we have a little chat before and after all these streams, which is nice to come together as a community. But on the next episode, there will be the hypnosis session around this, and then the next episode, the bonus episode, for those who are subscribers of the app at freehypnosis.app. You can find my app in the App Store, Android and on Apple. And you'll get the bonus version of the sleep one. That means you go to sleep transform while you sleep. Wake up and go, do you know what? Today I am. I'm enough, I'm worthy, I'm deserving, I'm going to do the things that have to be done. And therefore you start to make a difference in the world. And what I should really finally finish off with is when you get to that place of I am, you become the example to those in your life. You'll either repel those who you used to attract, who used to kind of like an energy vampire to hold you back and hold you down. You'll repel those people. You'll be shining so brightly that you'll blind them to run away from you. Like you'll be untouchable. You'll be just unstoppable. But in the same notion of that, you'll also attract the right people and inspire the right people, because you become the product of what can be done, rather what being a product of just your circumstance. So go to freehypnosis.app. You got tons of features there. You got 4-hour sleep sessions. We put 19 new ones in the last month. You got morning meditations. You got playlists. You got repeating. You've got downloading. You've got audio programs. You got all this, the day and night hypnosis sessions, hundreds in there. We got the custom hypnosis sessions where you get to choose certain main topics and symptoms you want to work on, and then you get to do all the things. And to be a subscriber, by the way, it's half the price of what I can tell of any app out there, whether it be monthly or yearly. And I just truly believe you're going to get a ton of value. If you enjoy my free work, you're going to really, really enjoy the app itself. So with that, my friends, I look forward to speaking to you on that next episode. I'm going to chat with everyone on the post-recording, I should say, of this episode on YouTube right now. So I look forward to speaking to you on a future episode. Many thanks and goodbye.